Museums have the privilege to serve, educate, enlighten, and empower. The digital realm offers a participatory exchange between museums and our audiences that has great potential to expand the reach of our collections and facilitate engagement and collaboration. The new ways we can share and generate stories is exhilarating to think about. And all this creative work certainly inspires and influences those of us at smaller museums. But it also leaves many of us feeling a little frustrated because smaller museums often have less staff or limited financial and technical resources. Therefore, digital projects can seem a bit unattainable. I proposed this talk because I thought telling you our experience about working on a shoestring might be beneficial. We've found partner collaborations to have tremendous benefits, but they also can require one to temper ambitious goals, accept pitfalls, remember to compromise, and revise one's attachment to a particular outcome. However, for smaller museums, by continuing to experiment, we can discover new ways of doing things that work within the limitations of our gallery's budget and staff knowledge. So I'll begin by telling you a little bit about the museum at FIT, our current exhibition, Global Fashion Capitals, and the ways we strove to provide our audience with collaborative projects that attempted to bridge the online and on-site visitor experience, as well as the successes and challenges of those collaborations. The museum at FIT is a university museum, and our galleries are located on the urban campus of the Fashion Institute of Technology. We are both an inward and outward-facing museum, meaning we serve over 30,000 students a year with special classes and tours, but we also engage a general visitorship of over 100,000 people a year who come to enjoy our free exhibitions and our free public programs. We also obviously serve a substantial virtual audience through our websites, social media, and online collection. Our permanent collections include about 50,000 costumes and accessories and 30,000 textiles. And with 3 gallery spaces, we mount over 8 exhibitions a year. Gallery FIT offers a space for student and faculty work. The Special Exhibitions Gallery has 22-foot-high ceilings, lending itself to dramatic and ambitious installations, such as our current exhibition, Fashion Underground, The World of Suzanne Barsh. A third gallery is the Fashion and Textile History Gallery, where we present 2 themed historical surveys a year that display objects exclusively from the museum's permanent collections. The exhibition currently in the History Gallery, Global Fashion Capitals, examines the rise of established fashion capitals, cities around the world, such as Paris, New York, London, and Milan, but it also explores the factors that enable other cities, such as Shanghai, Seoul, and Stockholm, to rise to global prominence. For at any given moment, somewhere in the world, a city is hosting a Fashion Week event. The exhibition's aim is to broaden the understanding of what constitutes a fashion capital and to expand the dialogue about the globalization of the fashion industry in the 21st century. So our digital media strategy was 1, to help orient our audience geographically, 2, to illuminate the increasingly polycentric and year-round fashion system, 3, to expand the number and range of emerging designers that we could show in our audience, and 4, to encourage multiple perspectives to join the conversation. And I'm not going to speak specifically about the exhibition's entire digital presence, but here's a quick rundown. We created an exhibition website, a digital style map, a Fashion Week calendar infographic, and a Fashion Week Google map, both of these functioning as visual demonstrations of how truly global and year-round the fashion calendar is. A digital publication of interviews with international fashion bloggers. We live streamed a fashion show and a panel discussion with 5 emerging designers, and we provided a robust social media presence on Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest using the exhibition's hashtag #FashionCapitals. Now, let me start by saying we have close to no budget for digital initiatives. Each exhibition is an opportunity and a challenge to envision projects that we can realize within very real constraints. And the more advanced media technology in museums becomes, the harder it is to produce projects with limited finances, staff time, and expertise. Collaborations, therefore, can be a means to try out something you otherwise might not have been able to do. For global fashion capitals, we were lucky to be able to work with two separate external partners, Microsoft and the Finnish Cultural Institute of New York. The collaboration with Microsoft focused on creating a projected style map to help orient visitors geographically to the 27 fashion cities. Also, since in the history gallery, we can only display objects from our permanent collections, the addition of runway and street style images would broaden the range of what's on view and better illustrate the unique fashion culture of each city. We connected with Microsoft when one of our curators gave York Rhodes, the global business strategist of cloud startups at Microsoft, a tour of our exhibition space. He saw potential for us to expand engagement through media and offered to help us explore and execute new initiatives. So we worked with York to create a visual projection and interactive website. Both would aggregate tagged images from Instagram and deliver them into visual city groupings on a map. The 8 by 10 foot wall projection would do this in an animated way. And an iPad iteration would allow visitors to self-select the cities they most wanted to see, rather than having to wait for an animation to cycle through. York also suggested that the code could be replicated for future exhibitions. Well, it was meant to be simple. Select the graphic map, use Instagram images, and identify the city, designer, and photographer with hashtags. Design a script to pull each city's images into one display group. Locate each place name on the map, and animate each city's name so it's clear which city's images you're looking at. We originally thought we could use existing tags on Instagram, but we quickly learned that pulling images based simply on a hashtag, New York Fashion Week, for example, doesn't always produce the desired results. So we created a private Instagram account from which to pull the selected images and hashtags. In the end, the projection turned out pretty close to how we envisioned it. The images are updated weekly on our end by an intern, and it functions as a great introduction to the exhibition. But as with most digital projects, nothing is ever as simple as you at first think it will be. And well, call me a sadist, but I kind of like when there's an element of failure. You learn so much more. Because digital projects are nothing if not navigating the highs and lows of successes following failures, and failures following successes. So the challenges. We hit a couple of problems right off the bat. Due to FIT bureaucracy, and we are a big bureaucracy, and politics, it took forever to get approval to even work with Microsoft. And that left little time before our launch date, and we certainly didn't have enough money to find a developer who would deliver on such a short deadline. Thankfully, York believed in working with us so wholeheartedly that he offered to code the map himself. But since coding wasn't his expertise, additional delays ensued at every step, getting the images to animate properly, formatting the brightness and size of the text and images, timing the auto-cycling through each city, and animating the city names in the right place. The top left image shows an early idea to have the images and captions animate in a circle, which might have proved a bit more, visual flair, but it had to be abandoned. But losing this functionality wasn't that big a deal. It's simply a good example that it's not worth getting attached to specific results. Also, because of the coding delays, the style map didn't launch until a few weeks after the exhibition opened. So we had to nix the interactive iPad versions, which was fine. After a big rush job, sometimes you just sigh and move on. The successes. The map greets the visitors in the first gallery. It successfully locates all the fashion capitals and provides a glimpse into what is happening on the street and runway today. This virtual mapping of global style allows a disparate amount of information to come together in a succinct way. It's easy for us to update the images being displayed, and we believe it adds to the in-gallery visitor experience, even without the iPad version. And we do have student volunteers currently conducting evaluation surveys, so we'll learn more when the show comes down. Lessons learned? Well, start earlier, and keep your expectations flexible. An entirely different collaborative project was accepting an international fellow to create an electronic publication featuring interviews with fashion bloggers from around the world. Global Fashion Bloggers investigates current blogging practices and provides a range of voices that contribute to the discussions about established and emerging fashion capitals, local and global fashion, and the future of digital fashion. As the number of cities that produce fashion weeks grows, there's a simultaneous increase in the review and assessment of contemporary fashion, both by traditional media, such as fashion journalists, but also in the new media, such as Instagram and fashion blogging. It's now obvious that fashion news is disseminated so rapidly on the internet that fashionistas in Copenhagen can know almost simultaneously what's happening during Kiev Fashion Week. And with Instagram in particular becoming a darling of the fashion industry, brands are not only inviting key Instagram tastemakers to their fashion shows to share pictures of their latest collections, but the fashion shows themselves, like this recent Chanel show, are designed with how they will read on Instagram and other social media platforms. If the style map I just showed you uses Instagram images to visualize the tremendous growth in fashion weeks around the world, then our fashion bloggers publication can be seen as its textual complement, an opportunity to enrich the exhibition experience with diverse perspectives on this global phenomenon. How did this collaboration come about? Well, I got an email this past spring from a master's student in Helsinki who asked if our museum would be the host institution for a fellowship sponsored by the Finnish Cultural Institute of New York. The Mobius Fellowship Program, as it's called, provides a stipend for visual art and museum professionals to travel to New York for 2 months to work on a joint project with a cultural institution. We worked with our fellow Taina Laaksonen to formulate an effective project that would both serve the needs of the fellowship and meet the learning and engagement objectives of the exhibition. The goals of this collaborative endeavor were to integrate research, fashion, and digital media, add meaningful content to an exhibition, but also create something that could stand alone with its own unique presence, utilize community participation, find a creative solution to bridge the on-site and online visitor experience, and share knowledge and build connections between professionals to allow for international intellectual exchange. The resulting project features first-person accounts by 11 international fashion bloggers. The interviews represent a wide range of experience in fashion blogging, from cities as far apart as Mexico City and Seoul, Korea. Some of the bloggers describe the fashion culture of their particular city, but others have years of experience attending fashion shows around the world, and they offer a rich international perspective. The project workflow included communicating with Taina via Skype and Google Docs before she arrived in New York, researching bloggers, conducting the interviews, determining the platform, working with a web designer, and marketing the project on social media. Collaborations are great, but there are always challenges. And like the style map, this project also had time management issues. Working with our foreign fellow required the time not only to teach someone how to work within a large institution, but also to ensure that the museum's voice and brand is maintained. A lot like working with any intern. I worked closely with Taina to research fashion bloggers whose responses would be interesting to various audiences, and using my institutional email account to send and receive all the invitation emails meant I handled all initial correspondence with the bloggers. Additionally, the interviews were reviewed and edited by museum staff for length, clarity of meaning, and to ensure consistent quality throughout the publication. To me, a big compromise we made was in the platform selected. I had really hoped the project would turn up some interesting digital publishing solutions. I'm not sure exactly what I was hoping for, magical unicorns maybe, but we went with Squarespace. I articulated early on that I didn't want the project to look like a website in order to avoid the possibility that the digital publication would be confused with the exhibition website. But the selection was made on Taina's budget, and because her designers in Finland were most familiar with this web platform. And because Squarespace is subscription-based, global fashion bloggers will not remain live in perpetuity. In hindsight, I might have insisted on WordPress because the museum already uses it. However, the interviews will be archived via PDF, which is a totally reasonable compromise. We had plenty of successes. The project launched on October 13th via the museum's social media channels using the campaign hashtag #GlobalFashBlogs. The publication successfully complements the exhibition's themes around global and local fashion by bringing together many voices that explore the shifting landscape in fashion communications and marketing. Disruption is happening across all sectors of culture, and the fashion industry is not immune to being transformed by the internet and other technologies. And our fashion blogger interviews offer essential perspectives on this issue. And while some of our project's success came from planning, you just can't discount sheer luck. The luck of who responded. We reached out to dozens of bloggers, and the ones who agreed to participate ended up being an ideal mix of men and women, younger and older, some at the beginning of their career, and others with lots of experience. We got the sartorialist. We hope our digital efforts for global fashion capital successfully arouse curiosity and stimulate discussion around the myriad ways that fashion is presented around the world, both physically and digitally. It's clear that the notion of digital as something that operates separately from a museum's other activities is outdated and inaccurate. We don't go online, rather we exist in a world where the internet's everywhere and we dip in and out as we like. The Tate's digital media strategy of 2013 rings pretty true, proclaiming that digital must be a dimension of everything they do. But for smaller museums, the mandate of embracing digital can be daunting. And for those in the audience who, like us, are challenged by their resources, finding external partners with whom to collaborate is an essential means to expand one's digital media capabilities. In the past, we've been lucky to work with FIT students, for example. The digital text panels for our 2010 exhibition, Japan Fashion Now, was a collaboration with FIT's Media Design Club. Sometimes exhibition partners or lenders can be tapped for additional resources, as was the case with the heiress Daphne Guinness, who was instrumental in helping us realize a Pepper's Ghost visualization in the gallery. Assistance might also be found on listservs, for example, like that of MCN or a local chapter of WordPress developers. I don't remember exactly how imaging company Synthescape found us, but they are creating 360-degree high-resolution images for our forthcoming exhibition, Fairy Tale Fashion. The imaging of 8 of our collection's objects was graciously donated in part to raise awareness of their wonderful services. They also recently completed a cool virtual tour of our current exhibition, Fashion Underground. Museums might also find desirable partners in corporate organizations, which is how we came to work with Microsoft. Their corporate philanthropy departments often support cultural activities. And I think someone from Balboa Park Partnership is here, who was going to maybe attend, but holy collaboration, Batman, their partnerships reach across 29 institutions. It was only a few years ago that the museum at FIT began to ramp up its effort to use digital media to engage visitors in the gallery and online. We've been making steady progress. I'm proud to mention that the website and social media presence for our exhibition, A Queer History of Fashion, From the Closet to the Catwalk, received the 2014 Silver Muse Award from AAM in recognition of our use of media and technology for digital communities. And this year, we overcame 2 really big institutional hurdles. After long discussions, we now permit visitor photography in the galleries, and our IT department just agreed to hook up public Wi-Fi in our big basement gallery. Both reflect our persistent effort to provide more opportunities for our visitors to engage with us. We're all looking for ways to trigger our audience's curiosity and motivate them to participate, and asking how best to communicate with both established and new audiences to create positive, lasting experiences. So it's clear right now, it's all about experimenting. We're all trying out items from this bag of digital tricks, whether it be via websites, online collections, big data, interactives like touchscreens, QR codes, motion graphics, mobile apps, gaming, robotics, live streaming, crowdfunding, crowd curating, virtual tours, beacon technology, augmented reality, location-based tools, or projection mapping. How museums harness new technologies is definitely getting more interesting. The question is, how can we make projects memorable, effective, and resonant within the often very real constraints of time, money, manpower, technological know-how, and institutional support? And while digital media projects shouldn't be implemented just for the sake of novelty, social media and digital culture are definitely changing audience behaviors in ways that create both challenges and new possibilities for institutions. And these need to be addressed. At the museum at FIT, we've shown that even without immense resources, there are collaborative opportunities out there for museums, businesses, and startups to converge, to share knowledge and resources. Of course, as we harness these disruptive technologies, we may have to re-examine how we interpret, perceive, use, and display museum objects. And well, doesn't that sound interesting? Thank you.
So we have about 7 minutes for questions, and I think now I have to figure out how to turn on the microphone. Is it on? It is. So if you have questions, if you could please use the microphone, since we are audio recording, that would be great. I'll just leave it here for whoever wants to ask the first question. Okay.
Hi, this is really impressive. Great work for sure. I guess my question is, do you have an advice on how would you approach a corporation or a potential partner? Do you email them? Do you ask him for an appointment? Do you have any strategy on how to approach you?
It really depends on where you work. We are part of, as I mentioned, the Fashion Institute of Technology, which is a really big school that's part of the SUNY system. And when I mentioned that there were a lot of barriers to our working with Microsoft, the development office really wanted to have a conversation with our contact, York, prior to allowing us to work with him. Our curator was at at an event, and they were a sponsor at that event, and she went up and spoke to him, and he was interested in learning more about what we did. So it was, again, luck sometimes plays a role, but I would say that if you have a development office that you can, once our development office realized that we were just tapping him for his expertise, they were very generous in saying, oh, fine, no problem, because we weren't asking them for sponsorship. It wasn't any naming or branding situation. So networking was the way that happened for us.
I have a question. How do you plan on archiving, or are you archiving these great digital projects, and also the content that's generated from the projects itself?
There isn't a lot of content being generated out of the two projects that I explained today. The Global Fashion Bloggers project, if it had been on WordPress, we would have archived it in perpetuity on our server. So what we're going to do is we're going to work with somebody to convert them into PDFs, and they'll be linkable on the site. So that's the way we'll archive that. And the fellow, Tina, she's doing a post-project report that will look at all the social media engagement around her project. And we'll probably provide that also as content that people can look at in relationship to the PDF, the individual interview PDFs. The interactive map, which unfortunately never became interactive because we ran out of time to produce the iPad version. So it's really just a digital projection, which we'll videotape for our own archives. We've done other iPad projects, and those They're not online, but we do archive them internally for future reference. Anyone else?
Okay, if there are no more questions, I think we can give Tamsen a round of applause. And I'll ask the other folks to come on up for the next topic, which is life beyond social. And I thought I saw Chad. Oh, there's Chad. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So the hashtag for this topic is #BeyondSocial, if you would like to participate that way, in addition to #MCN 2015.
Thank you.
Oh, you've got a mic back. I'm going to sit here. And I think I think some new people have come in. If you want to introduce yourselves again as you come up and you can go ahead and get started, I think. Here, there are two of them. Would you like to do a duet? Okay, it's 1:45.
All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Life Beyond Social Media. We are delighted to see so many people in the room. I'm Elissa Frankle. I'm the Digital Projects Coordinator at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, and we're just going to quickly introduce ourselves and kind of talk about our social media bona fides very quickly. So I ran social media at the Holocaust Museum for 2.5 years. I took my current job running the in-museum digital experience just under a year ago. We're celebrating a year in December. Before that, I was actually involved in volunteering for Vicki in the Web and New Media office at the Air and Space Museum. And social media was a very interesting time in my life. Glad I did it, and glad I'm out. So we'll be talking about that a little bit today.
And I'm Vicki Portway. I'm head of digital experience at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., part of the Smithsonian. I've managed digital experience for a lot of years. I won't give you a number. In 2008, the opportunity for social media came up, and thinking this is something we should be doing, I started doing it myself in addition to my managerial duties, which is why I look so young. And gradually over time built it up, and then was able to hire on a brilliant social media manager, manager of online engagement, who is in the room, Sarah. Take a bow. And it was a great experience, and I feel it really made me a better manager to have experienced it directly.
Awesome. My name is Chad Weinard. I began my career in the curatorial department at the North Carolina Museum of Art, and found myself building blogs and starting social accounts, and worked my way up to a place where I was leading online engagement for an art museum. After that, spent some time as director of digital media at the Balboa Park Online Collaborative, and I'm now an independent museum technologist in Durham, North Carolina. And we're working right now on some big strategy questions and organizational questions. And this topic, I think, goes straight to a lot of those questions. What is the role of social media in the organization of the future? And what is the career path of that social media manager? So I'm excited.
Did you guys want to talk a little bit about the genesis of the session?
Our talk that we gave at, we had a little breakfast lunch thing.
Breakfast.
Yeah, at Museums in the Web, and had a great conversation with a bunch of folks about life after social media or life beyond social media, and next steps with their careers. And that's really what informed this discussion today. We wanted to go the next step and incorporate some of the feedback we got from that group. So
this session is largely geared towards those of you in the room who manage social media. But if you're coming in to learn about analytics or coming in to learn about the best way to tweet or the best times to tweet, you're going to be sorely disappointed. This session is really about your life, your career, and what you can do with everything that you've learned as a social media manager. But it's also a session geared towards those of you who supervise social media professionals, those of you in positions of leadership, understanding better the incredible value that you have in your social media professionals. Which is all to say one very important thing. Can I get the next slide? That you have superpowers. And I have a cape.
In the back, can you dim the lights just a tiny bit so that we can see the slides? Just a little bit.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Great. So you all have superpowers. I bet many of you may have suspected that you had social media superpowers, but maybe nobody's ever actually come out and said it to you. But you really do. You have many different categories of social media superhero-dom, and we're just going to talk about 3 of them today. Your superhero-ness for your institution, for your audience, and for scale on a broad level. Next slide, please. So you are an institution superhero. You may feel underappreciated by your institution. You may feel a little bit unloved and underappreciated for all of the time and the energy that you give to social media. But at the end of the day, you are really your institution's rock star because you know so much about your institution and all about your collection, all the things that you have, and you know how to access it, you know how to share it. You also know how to leap over divisional silos in a single bound. You know how to break down those barriers that we put in our institutions to find out the best ways to get the information from department to department and then out to your audience. You also know a lot about your institution. You know all of the stories behind it. You know how to share them. You know all the skeletons in the closet, even the ones that you can't share on Twitter. And you're able to find the best ones to say, here's why you should care about the work that we do at this museum.
Next slide. You're also an audience superhero. You know your audience probably better than anyone in the building. And if you were at the keynote this morning and heard Liz talk about empathy, you're the empathy central for your organization because you're really listening and monitoring what people are saying, thinking, feeling, doing. That's a level of involvement with your audience that most people don't have, even docents or customer service folks on the floor. So you can really talk to people in your organization about what may or may not work with our audiences. You can put things out on social media every day that each post is essentially a small little visitor evaluation test to see if that content or that approach or what you're saying or what you're doing is actually resonating with your audience in real time and adjust quickly. You also put the audience first in everything that you do because you know if it falls flat, you're the one who's going to have to deal with it. And you're always looking for different ways that you can connect the audience to your organization. One of the really important things that you can do is use that skill with your internal staff, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you also know the influencers out there that you can tap at any given time to help you achieve your goals.
And the next slide, please. And you are a scale superhero. So you already know some of the things that, from a strategy standpoint, we're trying to teach entire organizations. You have a process for getting a lot of things done and out the door. You're not satisfied with numbers that would delight other staff members on in-person engagement. When you perhaps hear about an in-person program going on at your institution, you're wondering why there's not an online component, there's not a social component that can scale that for the community. You can see beyond the numbers to identify trends that matter most. So you're seeing kind of a broader picture, a broader perspective of your audience. And like I said, we're trying, as we talk to museums about strategy, we're trying to get museums to do this. These are things that you have in your back pocket. You're familiar with benchmarks. You're agile and adaptable. These are all qualities of the staff of the future.
Next slide. So you may at times feel like no one really understands what you do. And in fact, sometimes people may not think what you do is actually important. So one of the things that we would encourage all superheroes to do is to be your own best advocate. And this doesn't mean promoting yourself. This really means helping other people understand the value and the superpowers that you actually have and wield. So bringing people into the process and using all the skills that you use on a daily basis with your external audience. You know, all of those ways of engaging people and getting them excited, apply that to your colleagues. Apply that internally and get them excited and wanting to get involved. You want to actually respect the fact that there are going to be skeptics and lead them into your world gradually. And then also you want to get away from the invisible jet mentality, which is flying under the radar and just assuming you'll get it done faster this way, it'll be fine. Actually, the more that you do that, the less the organization is going to really embrace what you're doing, and you become a part of the organization rather than this separate activity. Much as I like invisible jets, it's probably not the best way to go.
A superhero always has super friends.
Yes.
Don't go alone.
Don't go alone.
Next slide, please. But you also need to be your own superhero. You are both the prototypical damsel in distress as well as the superhero coming to save her from the railroad tracks. How many of you who are working in social media often feel overworked, overwrought, overburdened? You're up at 3 a.m., still tweeting, still responding to people, you're like, oh my God, why am I doing this? That's really, show of hands?
Show hands.
Go ahead.
Oh, right, I hear you. That's really not sustainable. At some point, something has to give. You have to find a new person to hire to take on the job so you can look at it from a more strategic angle. You've got to find new ways of working and new ways of dealing with your work to find ways that you can actually take care of yourself so you don't wind up like sleepy Wonder Woman cat. Crashed on the sofa there. You really have to view yourself as a whole person. You are more than your job. And I know that you know that. But sometimes just having somebody say it and respect the fact that you are more than the social media accounts that you manage, and you're more than your value to your community. You have value to yourself. And so being able to find that work-life balance and take time for reflection, look back on what are the things that are important to you, what are you missing out on because you're constantly running social media, and what are the ways that you can work through the processes in your organization to be able to create change in that. Finding ways to take better care of yourself because you're really no good to anybody if you're not good to yourself first.
So next slide. So we thought we'd have a little social activity to go along with the theme. If you want to pick someone next to you nearby and talk about these questions, what are your superpowers? You might have very unique superpowers at your organization. If you're not a social media manager, this applies to everybody. What does your job look like now? What do you want it to look like in the future? Do you have a vision for where you want your job to go? As Elissa was saying, if it's completely unsustainable right now and you can't possibly do this for the rest of your life, what do you want to do to change that? How are you going to change that? And how are you going to make it better? And where do you want the organization to go? We'll talk more about that. But yeah, so we're going to take 5 minutes for this.
So discuss, we'll call you back in about 5 minutes. And does everybody have a handout? There should be going around somewhere. So if those of you with handouts could pass the stacks over to people who don't have them. Take 5 minutes, we'll call you in a sec. Things that they can do to make sure that they're taking all these steps and they and then the backside is a worksheet for institutional vision.
like similar more like a creative process. When I worked for an innovation company for a short time, and I did a bunch of freelancing and learned a lot about it. When I got to the museum, I realized that I just the idea. It's like someone has an idea, the idea means so they don't build in any sort of process to like learn. They just watch them and experience and technology. And then they also kind of like sort of embrace the design of education, like communication for your we're not going to be assigned. I'm okay with that. Yeah, right, exactly. So what I got into, like communication that like, well, I guess you can't do that. Like if I'm building a team around no, embrace the communication. Pretend they don't exist and complain about the fact that they're there. Use like, and then we're kind of introducing different frameworks, like idea model, let's give them like feasibility, biology, desirability model. Say, let's identify what our constraints are each pattern. Those become sort of design considerations and guidance for our work. And if you have an idea that seems violent, let's keep working on the idea until we get strange to get somewhere, not to be strange to get Right. Like I don't
All right, guys. So your 5 minutes are up. This is a tweet-length discussion session.
Time to share your superpowers.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
Wrap it up.
Yeah. Dana's superpower as chair is to silence the room.
So could we just get 3 people really quickly to shout out your superpower? Yes.
Shrinking things. Shrinking large amounts of well-researched text into digestible data.
Awesome. So that, for the recording, is shrinking things. Shrinking large amounts of well-researched data into small digestible chunks.
140 characters.
Yes. Another superpower. What do we got?
Managing copyright issues when posting on social.
Managing copyright issues and posting on social. That is definitely a superpower. One more. Making curators like social media.
Awesome. Is that like the Force?
Yes.
That is. That's
yes.
more like a Jedi mind trick, I think. But it's awesome.
So there was a question on social media that I saw coming in, not that I'm tweeting during my own session, but about, okay, so this is sounding like a pep talk. So what happens next? What do you actually do beyond social media? Well, Chad is going to tell you what it is that you can do beyond social media.
The answers are right here.
I have all the answers.
Next slide, please.
That's brilliant. The answer is there's no path for life after social media. Museums haven't figured out what to do with you yet. I think they will, and that's important. Museums of the future will need these skills. Museums of the future will need the skills you have. They will need to look like you and act like you. They're just not there yet. And so the question is, what are you going to do in the meantime? You'll need to carve your own path in the organization. You'll need to expand the skills that you have and perfect them. Where do you think the organization should be going? You have a very unique perspective, both of your audiences and of how the entire organization works. You're the silo buster in the organization. You've had to go to the curators, you're in education, you're in the conservation studio, you're down on the floor. You're the one that, and maybe the only one in your organization that is working on this level. Eventually the whole organization is gonna have to be like that. You're the trailblazer.
It's a huge opportunity to shape the future of your organization.
How does that relate to your museum's vision? As you advocate for yourself, you need to memorize your mission statement. You need to be able to say at all times in every meeting, what I'm doing here relates to that in the mission statement, because it does. And how can you use your superpowers to get it there? that is a great question, and we're going to have a discussion period right now where you guys can work that out and let us know.
So basically, the answer to the question about what happens after social media is that you are part of defining that. You know, nobody's defined that for you. There is no definite path for those of us who have been in social, and quite frankly, for those of us who work in digital, insert noun here. So you get to carve that. But fortunately, you have your superpowers and you have your other super sidekicks. So you guys all get to work together and figure out what this actually looks like and how you can change your institution for the better. So on your handout, you have a worksheet where you can do this when you get back home, talking about your institution's mission and vision and how you can use your superpowers to influence it and to change the way that work happens at your museum. But we're going to take 5 minutes now, again, for you to go back with your original partners or new partners to discuss these questions. You know, where should your institution be going and how can you help it to get there? So take 5 minutes, discuss.
I was very excited. I was hoping to be able to say whether it was part of sort of strategy. That's what I heard. I hate to say that I don't have like a faith. I mean, I heard it, but I don't know my own. I don't want to say that. Can I make a comment about this? Yes. To embrace my new comment. I think may want to add now. Where companies have been involved there are times in the say social was it their boss? Did they speak? When is the last time they said the recommendations to the and I don't think you're addressing that here. From other meetings, the guys have known more power. And they learn. We know everybody knows their boss is so those
So take about 30 more seconds.
That's my 5 cents worth. And that's why I couldn't do it like the open discussion.
Please begin wrapping up your amazing discussions. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Shh. Thank you.
All right. bubbly, very bubbly. Well, they're social. So that concludes the content portion of this talk, which leaves you either 7 more minutes to share out what you've been talking about, or 7 more minutes to ask us whatever questions you have, which Dana will now moderate.
I'm just going to ask people to use the microphone.
Here we go.
Please use the microphone if you have questions or want to share. Who wants the mic? You were all so chatty.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for some of you who have done social for more on an institutional basis. What about dividing accounts versus having like one consistent voice for the institution, and what are your thoughts on that?
So I can speak to how we did it at the Holocaust Museum, which is something that we put into practice right before I left the job. And instead of creating different social media accounts for different places in the organization, what we did was create social media ambassadors. So we deputized certain people around the institution to say, okay, we trust you, go tweet, go stick USHMM in your handle. Make it separate from your usual social media handle. So I'm Elissa_USHMM, in addition to Museums 365. And we just go and report from our jobs. So it's a way to get the more personal angle on the work that we're doing, but also to get the work of the museum outside of the main account out.
We have a mixture. We have a couple of programs that have their own accounts because they have niche audiences, and they're managed very well, but we make sure that we have a process in place where we know that it's going to be managed well, it's not just going to die out. And then we also have contacts around the museum that we tap into, and Sarah's back there nodding her head because she's really the mastermind behind all this. So we are trying to distribute those skills. We've actually run some training sessions. Sarah's run some training sessions on getting people hands-on with the tools, because a lot of times the barrier to participation is just having a little bit of trepidation about the tools. I don't know how that Twitter thing works, So those have been very successful. Inviting people to be involved in an event that involves social media has also kind of opened people's eyes to the possibilities and what you can do with the audience. There's a lot of mystery, when you're not involved directly in it. So the more you can invite people in, the better. But did you have?
I have something to add, which is just I feel like we should talk after this because the National Archives has 130 social media accounts, and I have some thoughts on that.
That's a lot of accounts.
It is. It might be a record. Maybe. Do I get a ribbon?
Yeah, maybe a cape or something. I think there are lots of different. I think there are lots of different ways that organizations can do it. One thing that I've been thinking about lately is, from a strategic kind of organizational level, how amazing would it be to have, as we were saying before, social media managers have these skills, have these qualities. How amazing would it be to have those skills and qualities across the organization?
Ian.
So maybe the recording can pick me up if I just speak up really loud, or there's a thing. If you guys were at Ignite last night and Chad shared one of my strategy slides with the Swedish chef, I'm really proud of that slide. The little arrow spun and everything. If you came last year, on my SlideShare, there's a slide deck about how to build out social media throughout your organization. At the ROM, we have various official accounts, but we also encourage social media use by our staff. We have a list on Twitter with about 80 staff using social media, using Twitter specifically. We also have Twitter handles in our map so that visitors can engage with our staff while they're actually visiting. And this didn't come about overnight. This is a long, hard road. And what we've done is we've actually hold regular training sessions on one small thing. So when Twitter allowed you to add multiple photos to a tweet, we did a session on that. So we're not overwhelming people with too much information. We're keeping it really small. We plan for an hour. We hold an hour session, but we only plan for 10 minutes. And then there's a lot of discussion, a lot of questions. So it's not something that will happen overnight. You really have to put the work in and help people along and build capacity with your staff. And then, you'll see the results happen with everyone working towards the same goals, using social efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, and expanding a little bit on that, because there was a sidebar question about how do you communicate with leadership? How do you move through that hierarchy and actually influence at the higher levels? And Ryan's done some great things at the ROM to present to leadership the importance of social media and its impact with the audience. And so anything that you can do to raise the profile of what you're doing on a regular basis with everyone in the organization, you know, outside your sphere of influence right now, is going to help to communicate that upward. Seizing any opportunity you have to do that, but talking in their language. Use that empathy that you've built through what you do with social media to understand the needs of leadership, to understand how they think and the types of information they need to know what to do with this social media thing, which hopefully will become something that isn't referred to as a tool. It'll become an actual activity that's integrated in everything we do.
That'll be our next step.
That'll be our next talk.
Can we take one more question or comment?
So as a graduate student that's just starting to get into this, where do I look for inspiration and resources, and what are some good things to look at?
You should turn around and chat with the woman right behind you. Meet Sarah Banks.
And Megan?
Yes, the Muse Social hashtag. And Ryan over there.
There's a Facebook group, International Social Media Group.
Okay.
You are on that? Okay.
Go chat with Laura Hoffman standing in the back. I apologize to anybody who I'm not seeing or pointing out as
Pretty much
there's this.
everybody.
Basically, go talk to people in the session or talk to us.
Yeah.
But Muse Social is pretty active on Twitter. And just go ask your questions. It's a really supportive, positive group. Well, thank you guys. Use your handouts. They have cheat sheets and checklists and things that will remind you how awesome you are on the bad days. And thank you all so much.